I have to keep pinching myself today because today we're interviewing Nick Mason, famous clearly for being one of the founding members of Pink Floyd, car racer, complete petrol head, and pilot and aircraft owner. Nick Mason, thank you very much for agreeing to come and talk to us for the Flyer live stream. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you. Obviously, most people will know, pretty much everyone will know your history with regards to the music world and Pink Floyd, and founding member, being a drummer. A fewer people, but still a lot of people will know about your, I guess, is it okay to call you a petrol head? Is that
yeah?
Petrol head, racing driver. You've competed at Le Mans, and you own at least one very, very nice Ferrari that I know of, and probably more. But today we're not here to talk about music. We're not here to talk about cars. We're here to talk about flying. Fewer people know that you're a pilot. So how did that come about? Why did you decide to learn to fly? Was it just a kind of fun thing?
No, it wasn't really. It was all Vic. Do you know Vic Norman?
I do know Vic Norman.
Vic was a friend of mine who I'd met through motor racing, and I was talking to Vic about touring and saying that one thing I don't like about touring is all the flying. It's one of those things that you become more and more nervous about it, and then everyone you're travelling with becomes more nervous. We'd had a couple of sort of rough rides when we were coming back from Japan, I think, at the edge of a storm. And he said, oh, well, what you need to do is you need to learn to fly. And that seemed as a fairly odd way of approaching it. But then I thought about it and I thought, yeah, actually, maybe let's try that.
When was that, roughly?
I went up 40 years ago, I'm guessing. Yeah.
So did you just kind of like walk into your local flying club and say, I want to learn to fly?
Oh, God, no. No, I relied on Vic to set it up for me, which he did in the shape of Brendan O'Brien.
Uh-huh.
And I realised that Brendan was exactly what I needed when he said, right, lesson one, we're going to use a Jodel, I think it was, and we're going to go to Paris to get the right sort of flying jacket. I thought, yes, this is fine.
So you learned to fly in with Vic out of...
Well,
sorry, not with Vic,
not with
Brendan.
Vic, with Brendan. And I think there was the Jodel and Slingsby.
Okay.
Firefly.
And that was out of Denham or Elstree?
Out of Elstree, I think it was. Yeah.
And did that achieve the aim of making commercial flying more pleasant?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, because then you've got, apart from anything else, you know that the people up the front are much better than you are. So it actually made perfect sense. And once you sort of get into it, it's a fascinating thing to do, and there's so much information coming in all the time from either the flying, but also, the weather and the whole thing.
And so, but once you've achieved that aim, and then you say, okay, I've learned to fly, and this whole commercial flying is not as bad now, you didn't just drop it there. You carried on it, and to this day still fly.
Yeah, as I say, I really enjoyed it, and in fact, what also played into it was the fact that my wife really liked it, and she once I'd got my license, or once I was getting my license, she went, well, I'm having some of this. So she then got involved, and in fact, when we made the transition to helicopters, it was actually David Gilmour who bought a Robinson and took Annette for a ride, and she came back and she just said, this is what we have to do.
So you got into helicopters?
Yeah.
And how did you find... I mean, I did a helicopter license. They were quite interesting at the beginning. It took me quite a few hours to figure out how to hover.
Oh, I think it takes most people. Yeah, that's the difficult bit.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you bought a helicopter?
Yes. What happened was we were flying the R-22, And it was sort of fun, but we hadn't really got very much to do with it. But then we had a ride in a jet ranger, and that opened up something completely different because we'd got 2 small children, and we could actually do the school run, or not actually the weekend run, not the school run. But it was that thing of it was really useful, and it could carry everything we needed, and that was that really.
So once your wife did a fixed wing license, having said, "Oh, I need some of that," and then a rotary license as well.
Yeah.
And did you buy a Jet Ranger?
Yep.
And then I think, because I don't think you've got a Jet Ranger at the moment.
No.
Oh, you might have, I don't know.
I looked this morning. I haven't got one. No, I think we'd both done about 500 hours on the Jet Ranger, and I just thought, I'm getting older. I'd really like something a bit more modern, and we bought a Squirrel, which has been terrific. We've had it nearly 20 years now, I think.
Fantastic airplanes.
Love it, absolutely love it.
And so, is that form the bulk of your flying?
Well, we did do quite a lot of fixed wing because again, when we started, we both probably trained on the Slingsby, but then we went out and bought a Robber, the R400.
Fantastic aircraft.
Which we still own. I hardly fly it, but I've now got a grandson learning on it. And in fact, looking back on it, I'm quite impressed with what we did, because I think Annette had only just got her license, and we set off for France and then flew down to south of France and went across to Ibiza at one point.
How's it feel watching your grandson learning to fly?
I think it's probably slightly better than watching your children go motor racing.
Do they do that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Not compulsory, you understand. I think
You issued orders. It was a bit like you will fly in the 421. So you've got a Squirrel,
I've got
and a DR400.
Yeah, and an L4.
And an L4.
Okay. Which hardly gets any use at all, but you never know when it might come in use.
You never know. Yeah, everyone should have an L4, just in case. I was doing a little bit of reading about this, and it seems that over the years you've been involved in various other kind of aircraft.
Well, there was a period when David Gilmour and I shared a number of things, but he then went off and wanted to do more and more, and I think we had sort of half ownership on a few aircraft, including a Stagger Wing, which I just was never flying it, and I just thought, I don't really need this. And he really, he wanted to go to North Weald, I think. And so I actually came out of that and just stayed on the helicopters.
I did read, I couldn't quite believe it at first, but so maybe I got it wrong. I did read that at one point you owned a Golden Eagle that you kept at Gatwick.
Yes. Yes. No home should be without one.
No.
Yeah, and we actually used it for touring. It was a lovely thing to do, but not very practical.
I'm guessing that both you and David Gilmour were happy with the whole aviation concept. That's not necessarily always true with a wider group of people.
What do you mean?
I mean, sometimes some of your friends aren't as enthusiastic about aviation as you are, and you have to get dragged along.
Yes, that's true. But if as David and I were the principals of the band at the time, it was fairly easy to issue an order.
So,
More like they'd Luftwaffe, I have to think.
And I think you also have the distinction of having owned at one point the last Super Cub built white piper.
Yeah, which was actually a lovely thing. But again, it's that thing, if the things stay in the hangar for too long, it starts being a pain, really. And as I say, once we'd really got into the helicopter, we actually used it rather than always going for breakfast somewhere and then coming back again.
I think it's a terrible thing for me as an aviation publisher to say, but it is possible to have too many aircraft.
Yeah.
Because they do, if they're not used, they do gradually just dissolve.
Yeah. No, I think people underestimate how I would say the same with cars, that it's a great idea to have 400 cars in your basement, but actually it's not. You don't really get that much out of it.
Looking back on first of all, on your fixed wing flying, are there any sort of flights that stand out as?
I think really that whole thing of going abroad is probably the thing you sort of remember, because it just opens up such a world. And particularly, I think we talked about it earlier, the business of flying in France, which is so relaxed. And we had a steerman for a while, which I guess was sort of Vic Norman's speciality. But we actually went to France and with a couple of other people in aircraft, and I think around Bergerac, and did quite a lot of training on that. That was just a wonderful way of spending the time. And French, I mean, the interesting thing is that there'd be the sort of regular flight from Paris coming in, and then they'd say, just hold for a moment, just let him get out the way and carry on.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful country to fly in, a very easy country to fly in. So on the Stearman, it's a great airplane. So it's quite big. If you can put it next to an L4 or something, or even a Super Cub, it's a step up. So, and it's not super fast either.
No.
So it may have taken you a while to get to Bergerac.
It did. I remember, because I can't remember. I think we were on our way there, and there was a conversation with a controller, and we said we're a formation. And he said, looks more like a gaggle to me.
It was a bit cutting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A bit unnecessary.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it really probably has such a cheap landing fee, you can let him off though. And the helicopter, I mean, helicopters are fantastic and versatile machines, but if you're going to go a long way in one, you know it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you taken the Squirrel overseas? Or?
Yeah, well, because you can, with the Squirrel, you can more or less do Denham to Le Mans without refueling, which is sort of perfect, particularly when I was doing that, I won't say regularly, but that sort of thing. The big difference is when you, and particularly with helicopters, I think you need to be current enough to enjoy it. And actually, it's not really a let's go for breakfast and come back. It's when you can actually use it and land somewhere that you'd want to get to. And particularly with motorsport, of course, it works. And also with English weather, it's just a little bit easier than doing a fixed wing.
Do you fly at night in the helicopter?
We're night rated, but very little. I mean, normally I would think in the last year or two, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not current with the 3 landings or whatever it is.
Yeah. And so obviously you fly and your wife flies, both of them. Do you often fly together? And if so, how does that go?
At this point, he stormed out of the building shouting. I can't tell you.
Okay.
And we did do a crew resource management.
It's joyous and wonderful.
Yeah. No, it's really good because it's a bit like flying with an examiner, really, most of the time. But if things get difficult, we're pretty good. And that's the bit I really like. We're enormously critical of each other. But if things get difficult, and we'll not have many things, but occasionally not sure about the weather or not sure about something, we're really good. We know that the first one to call turn back will turn back. But also one can do the radio, one can do the flying, and so on. And in fact, my eldest daughter is also rated on the Squirrel.
Okay.
I mean, she hasn't flown for a while now. I wouldn't trust her immediately, but it's quite a nice thing to have.
Did she do the CRM course as well?
No,
No.
she's much more grounded than me all my way. No, but it's interesting because the big thing was the instructor said, so you've gone on very badly in the cockpit with some new captain or whatever. What do you do? She said, wait until we land and then kick him down the stairs. And then, and what about you, Nick? And I said, I think I'd probably just pour custard into his flight bag. I tend to be a bit more.
So did you know,
circumspect.
once you'd done the CRM course together, did that at all translate to times out of the cockpit? Or
No,
did you get this?
no, as far as I wouldn't recommend it as a marriage guidance.
So tell us about Wrentham.
Most people believe that this is Vic Norman's aerodrome, personal aerodrome. In fact, there are actually three of us, Torquil Norman, Vic, and myself. And I came into it sort of rather late because I think there was someone else was going to share it and dropped out. And Vic's very persuasive, brilliant salesman. Said, of course you need a share in an airfield. And he was right.
I remember when he announced Breitling as a sponsor, they held a press event there, and I think because they knew the people at Breitling at the time, and I wanted to go, and they said, "Yeah, no, I'm sure Vic will let you fly in." And he let me fly in the 182, but I don't think he was very happy about having a Cessna 182 landing at Wrentham, to be honest.
He's quite a bit of a martinet. He's definitely a member of the Luftwaffe.
So how about your future aviation?
Well, at my advanced age, not much in terms of changing anything. I mean, I think we'll the Squirrel's about as advanced as you want to go, and B3 is fantastic in terms of what it'll lift, and you never have to do the sum in the book. So
how long have you had that Squirrel around?
well, 15 years plus, and what we did was we put in a sort of glass cockpit when it came up for its 12-year annual.
I was going to say, because do I remember rightly, were you a Garmin ambassador at one point?
Yes, I was.
You were. I'm sure I remember seeing some ads. You were in some ads with her next
It
year.
was, I mean, it's not a long story, but basically we put the basis of it all in, but then it transpired that they hadn't actually got clearances for some of the wizard things that it would do, which was quite a disappointment. And there was a lot of talk of angry letters and lawyers and so on. And I said, let's not go that route. Let's see if we can do something else, which was to actually try and work with them. And we, I suppose, for 2 or 3 years, it was just a really nice thing to have that relationship with them rather than a punch-up.
Yeah, no, always works better that way, doesn't it? So that was kind of like the last avionics. You don't keep on adding new avionics to your.
No, not really. I have enough trouble working with them anyway. I mean, it's a fantastic thing, and that when it can really help you. It can ease the flying so much with a good autopilot, And the TCAS, or the traffic avoidance system, I think is invaluable.
Yeah, no, I agree. I did an avionics refit a few years ago and ended up with both those. And I think, I mean, you learned to fly before I learned to fly, but we both learned to fly in the pre-GPS days. And I look back at that and I wonder how I ever flew without a GPS. I mean, can you remember flying without a GPS and ever getting lost?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
On my first solo, thinking hopelessly lost, and I was about to think about calling someone and saying that, and I looked down and there was Elstree just beneath me. Oh, right.
I'm not sure I'd actually go flying without a GPS these days, to be honest with you.
But it doesn't help make you think when you see all these endless programs about World War II, and there was a navigator staring into the darkness, and you just think, how did they get there and how did they get back?
And those Lysander pilots that were trying to find a field in the middle of nowhere, which is hard enough as it is, and then when you land, you got people trying to kill you as well. So, as well as being the Garmin ambassador, you're also an ambassador for the Royal Navy Historic Flight, Navy Wings, or whatever it's called these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I think, particularly with helicopters, it's great to have some connection into the military. Occasionally get to, you get the opportunity to fly with some of them, or just talk to some of the pilots. And in fact, we're coming back to my marriage now, because we had, I think we were on the simulators where they were a pair. And so the instructors were very impressed with my wife, who shot me down, which is, I think, surprised everyone.
Did you end up with custard in her bag afterwards?
Do you remember, remember Dennis Kenyon?
Yes. Yeah, he did some writing for us back in the day.
Well, we actually booked him for my wife's birthday party, which was a terribly good thing, because he did the sort of display, almost ground level display. And most of the people there thought it was my wife flying it. Either that or someone who'd been drinking heavily.
I fear aviation may lose this particular battle, but let's just imagine for a second that for whatever reason you decide that you have too many vehicles. So you've got your Squirrel, the DR400, the L4, and your collection of cars. What goes first, the cars or the airplanes? Or the aircraft, I should say.
Hang on, what are we talking about? Losing cars or aeroplanes? Or
if for whatever, let's say that you decided you needed to downsize because of your hangar is too small or something. I don't know.
Yeah. What would I get rid of first?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think I'd start the other end and say I'd keep the GTO and the Squirrel.
That's not a bad combination, is it?
No.
GTO and a Squirrel.
Yeah.
I think on that note, that's a great place to leave it. Nick, thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.